what I have prepared for my short segment this morning is really just a collection of mindsets, of tools, which I've picked up along the way through my career. It's important, especially for our young leaders, to be able to demonstrate the thoroughness in how they think through their problems, that they attack not just the surface data or the surface issues, that they go to the root of the problems and they address the problems systemically, if I may use that word. Because solutions always have repercussions, solutions have implications. And it's important for strong leaders to think systemically. When they put a solution in place, they understand what the implications are and manage those implications. But also, of course, attack the root causes. Yeah. So again, it's something that's out there, but it's a skill that we are building and assessing among our cadre of leaders. In the next slide, this is a slide that I particularly like. It's about emotional intelligence, and this is a very simple diagram of the brain. My auntie Natty, who's based in Seattle, she's a therapist for Asian professionals in that part of the U.S. Was the first one who told me about this years ago, and she was saying, you know what, the amygdala in our brain, it's the seat of the emotions. It's what you call the lizard part of the brain. It's the primitive part of the brain. It's the fight or flight, and we learned this in psychology back in college. It was the fight or flight response center of the brain. When we feel threatened or when we feel joyous or exuberant, it's the part that becomes most active in the brain. It's the prefrontal cortex that's the CEO of our brain. Yeah, it's where reasoning is. It's where the thinking skills are. It's where we recall and remember. Basically, it's the logical part of the brain. The thing about the way the brain is constructed is there's such a thing called the amygdala hijack, where if you become too emotional, the amygdala throws out the prefrontal cortex. Anytime you're angry, frustrated, depressed, joyous, happy, excited. So you could imagine the last impulse purchase that you made. Maybe you were very excited about that new gadget or that new accessory, and you bought it without thinking much, or comparing and evaluating really, and then you end up with something that you regret you purchased. And that's because the emotions always throw out our reasoning. And among the leaders that we are developing in our organization, we are, I guess, making them more aware about how they manage their emotions, making them more aware about how they react to certain situations, that they get through the emotions quickly in order for reasoning to actually set in. And earlier in this segment presentation, I was talking about the emotional journey, and in preparing to adapt to the change, in preparing to retool for the change that's taking place, it's important that we get through the emotions of shock, anger, frustration, depression, because after we've gotten through that emotional curve, is the only time that we could actually reasonably think about what we can do to adapt to the changes that are taking place. And for strong leaders, it's important that whenever there's an issue, whenever there's a crisis, whenever there are things that that could be particularly upsetting, or maybe things that could be on the extreme positive side that makes us too happy or too joyous, it's important to get over it and really use our prefrontal cortex, really get down to reasoning to be able to make good decisions. Yeah. So emotional intelligence is a key to good decision making when you think about it. Yeah. So leading with the brain in mind. The next slide, Joy, is about social intelligence. So I'm on the fifth component of leadership potential. And this is really about, I put there, generosity that builds a deposit of goodwill. One of the legacies that we have from the founder of Metrobank is this outward mindset and this habit of helping others. And that's why our tagline is keeping our clients in good hands, in the good hands of Metrobank. And social intelligence is really building that deposit of goodwill among the people that we work with, or the people that we live with, or the people that we love or care for. It's really that outward mindset of trying to put ourselves in the shoes of others and understanding what are their goals, what are their priorities. So when we think about developing our leaders, we go not only into their professional goals and priorities, we try to understand them as human beings. What are their goals and priorities even in their personal lives? Some of them are married, some of them are single parents, some of them are supporting aging parents. The diversity of the situation and the personal front is just so wide. And it's important that we identify what they're going through, what their situation is personally, professionally, what their goals and priorities are, what's most important to them. And then understand what are the burdens and challenges that they carry, yeah, on their journey. Everyone is in a journey to a point B, but what burdens or challenges are they carrying with them? And these are leaders that we're trying to develop to become strong leaders in our organization. And we need to understand goals and priorities, burdens and challenges, so that we could address and help. Yeah. So it's this outward mindset of leaders towards their teams, of senior leaders towards other leaders, and this habit of helping, not only on the professional front, but also on the personal front. So putting in place a coaching and mentoring program for our cadre of leaders is something that we've started. We started a few years back because it's this outward mindset and this habit of helping others that we'd like to instill, this social intelligence among our leaders. On the next slide, Joy, influence at the end of the day is really the outcome of that emotional intelligence and social intelligence, because those two things create the depth of connection with individuals. And it's that depth of connection that determines how much we're able to influence other individuals or even our organizations. And strong leaders need to have that depth of connection. You might have the intellectual capacity, but without this depth of connection, without this interpersonal dimension, it will be hard to lead and influence. Of course, the best leaders, the strongest leaders, lead even without authority. They lead even with their humility. Yeah. And it's they're able to do that because of the depth of connection. There's no need to intimidate, there's no need to flaunt their power or their pay grade. There's no need to exert their authority or assert their authority. They lead because of that depth of connection. On the next slide, Joy, if you would please, is my last slide. It's the seventh part on the third dimension. So I was talking about intellectual capacity, interpersonal skills, and the third one is in intensity. And like I said earlier at the start, we were thinking about drive, endurance, resilience, execution. At the end of the day, after discussing with our leaders in our organization, we said, you know what we're really looking for is grit. And what's grit? Grit is the courage and conscientiousness to follow through on a mission with resilience and excellence. Again, we make no claim of inventing this on our own. We looked outside and we said, okay, what will we use to articulate the behavior that we want to see in strong leaders? There's a nice Japanese saying, Nana korobi ya oki. And some of you may have heard that. Nana korobi ya oki. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8 times. And that's grit. We may not use that word every day. We use words like endurance and resilience and execution and drive. But if you go to TED Talks, if you go to YouTube, you'll see a lot of really interesting videos about grit, even among children. You will see grit in the picture of a child who's failing his algebra subject, but who spends the weekend practicing by solving all the problems at the back of his book so that he could turn around his grade. You see grit in a father of a family who may have been laid off because of the pandemic, but finds ways to still earn a decent and legal living to be able to feed his family and send his kids to school. You'll find grit in a young man who may have found the love of his life, who happens to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, sorry. And he says, I don't care if she's got a boyfriend, I'm going to pursue her with reckless abandon because that's the girl I want to marry. Yeah. You find grit in leaders, in teams and organizations. You find it in organizations that are reconfiguring their processes so that they could continue to serve their customers. You find it in teams that are finding ways to be able to deliver performance even while they're working from home, split on site and working from home in new ways of working. Um, you find it in the example of an aging priest who was the leader in his society, who was struck by a debilitating stroke and thoroughly paralyzed. And he tells himself and his loved ones that it's the condition that he had been praying for all his life, to be in a state of utter dependence on God. And he goes on to love and serve the Lord and bring others closer to God, not in spite of his condition, but through his condition with the little that he has in that kind of vegetative state. So grit is that force multiplier we're looking for among our leaders. So to summarize, it's intellectual capacity, interpersonal skills, and integrity. It's the way that we are building the right behaviors among our leadership cadre to create a culture of strong leadership in our organization. Trixie, just want to say thank you again to you and to your team and to those who have attended this conference. Thank you for the opportunity to share the little that we've got from our organization and how we're building this culture of strong leaders in our bank. Thank you.